That is what the platform is in a way, is a funnel that takes people with ideas and tries to put them through a set of steps to turn those ideas into good quality courses.
Welcome back to another episode of a Kiwi Original. Today on the show, I'm joined by Shanan Holm, who is looking after a platform called iQualify. And this is a learning management system, the type of platform you need if you've got smart people who understand smart things and you want to scale that knowledge to a group of people. Really useful for not just accreditation, but for training to improve the confidence and understanding in complex topics for not just students, but also in the commercial sphere, I believe. If I'm wrong on that, Shannon's going to correct me straight away. So first of all, welcome to the show, Shanan.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about iQualify. Tell me about the platform and the type of audiences that use your iQualify LMS.
Great. So iQualify is a software as a service learning platform, and that means that it's kind of batteries included. So people rock up to the platform, they set up their own instance, and they're away working. It's designed for anyone to better create online training, providing they've got kind of ideas and knowledge bottled up. They can use the tools that we provide to get those ideas out into courses, and then those courses in front of people who can take them from the instance they set up. So it's a pretty sort of smooth journey from someone who isn't really that familiar with kind of educational software or learning software to fire it up, start creating, and then start seeing how their learners are attracted to their courses, make sure that they're pricing them correctly, and then make sure that they're getting the kind of uptake and completion that they expect.
Could this be then used by, let's say, the New Zealand-made manufacturers who may need to onboard staff or teach them about their products? Could this be maybe not everything, but like a fundamentals layer of getting to know the company and the products and the processes?
Yeah, for sure. So as well as kind of more, what you'd think of as formal education, we have a lot of use of the platform for doing things like staff onboarding, or even organizations that have members or suppliers to kind of get those people up to speed and maybe, kind of assign a badge to their learning to see when they've passed a certain threshold. So, you can sell this product line now because you've covered off these kind of basic requirements. And we can kind of recognize that with a badge that they can then put on their LinkedIn profile or link to on their CV or other things.
I can see this of being useful to buy New Zealand made, because we have brand managers within organizations that look after the artwork and the Kiwi trademark. But sometimes those people leave and new brand managers come on board. They're looking after the same product set, and they don't necessarily have the same level of knowledge as their predecessor around when they can use that trademark in which countries. And there's a lot of rules around how you can put country of origin on there. I'd never considered actually that one way of delivering that could be through a learning management platform.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of a pretty broad concept. So, and that's why as long as there's something to kind of cover, some information to cover, the ability to be kind of challenged on whether you've understood it, possibly in some cases the chance to video yourself in action applying that learning, and then have someone else come through to say, yeah, I recognize that, that's good practice, so you've got the stamp, you can get out there and start doing that in your job now.
Who are some of the customers that are using the iQualify platform now?
Yeah, so we've got quite a broad range, a lot in the tertiary education sector in New Zealand, actually, given that we've come out of, Open Polytechnic of New Zealand, which is a vocational education provider. That was our sort of origin. And so similar educational organizations that are doing distance or flipped kind of vocational learning. But what we've seen is a lot of businesses taking it up, particularly sort of around HR or other forms of training, and secondary schools where the learners are kind of on that tail end of secondary school. They might be doing things to get ready for further study or to get ready for the workplace. Things like Young Enterprise Scheme as well, kind of putting learners through iQualify for some of those kind of core practices and concepts. So sometimes on that theory end, but quite often actually I'm going to teach you how to do something, and you can use the platform to show that you've really understood it, and submit something that you've worked on, or something that you've made, or a presentation, or that kind of thing.
So it's come out of the Open Polytech. So it's actually come out of a place you would expect to have good educational standards and pedagogy. How do you then make sure that when it goes into those other organisations, non-profits or commercial organisations, that you get the same learning outcomes, because you have different authors? They're not all necessarily professors at a university or teachers at a polytech.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of cuts to the chase of why we exist in a way, is how do we take this sort of gem, which is, Open Polytechnic's New Zealand approach that's been around for 75 years, doing distance delivery successfully, but try and take that and turn that into something that's a software as a service platform that anyone can pick up and try and get those outcomes with. So that's been the sort of focus for the team, is firstly, how do you get any learner coming across the platform be able to get a consistent experience and get a good outcome? So how do they, quickly understand where they are and what they're doing and succeed? And then how do you take anyone out there who has this knowledge and run them through a process that results in something that a learner can understand? So that is what the platform is, in a way, is sort of a funnel that takes people with ideas and tries to put them through a set of steps to turn those ideas into good quality courses that result in some sort of outcome. There are a few tricks to doing that. So, one of them is that we've got a really good onboarding and customer success team who work with SMEs to help them understand kind of what they're doing, given that they don't always have learning design experts on the staff. So we do that job with them. And then the second part of it is a whole lot of templates that can be used to get the start of the course in place, and then start filling out the gaps with their sort of own subject matter expertise that'll provide, really sort of bottle up these things into a small focused bit of learning.
It's one thing to look at e-learning as compliance and regulation, but if it's also enables productivity, how should organisations like businesses or manufacturers think about e-learning as a productivity tool? Like where could they deploy it for that type of outcome?
Yeah, and I think that for business productivity, you're kind of really looking at kind of very small bite-sized learning where you can kind of measure the outcome. Because I think we can say to our customers, hey, delivering this course will result in more consistency or better process or better outcomes for your customers. But actually, if we can kind of provide that way for them to track that as well, that's one of the things that we try and do. So, take our starting point, but don't believe us. We'll give you the data to prove it for yourself, and kind of really encourage, kind of lean manufacturing processes and those kind of things that lend themselves to real kind of measurement-based improvement. And that's the way that we run the platform as well. So, we look at kind of the results of our customers using the platform and feed that into improvement. And we try and work with others to do the same with the courses that they produce.
Yeah, I think I really like that, and the approach being that you can look at that data and see, who's using what content, and you can see based on that what more you should do that's similar to that content, but also what business processes are supported by that tiny e-learning course or piece of knowledge. And I think more organisations could take that kind of digital breadcrumb approach where you don't have to do a PhD or a 12 months of learning to get competent. Maybe you just need these, 8 small bite-sized chunks of learning, plus you need someone that's going to coach you through your first 3 months for everything else. And I think in some of these quite agile manufacturing businesses, being able to spin up content, particularly when a new product or a new process comes out, it could reduce the time to competency for people that are new to that subject.
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is where we're seeing the kind of world of learning move generally, which is, what's the thing I need now? What's the thing I need next? So rather than sort of locking someone away in a degree for 3 to 4 years, give them the first 6 months and get them into the workplace, and then work with the employer to figure out along the way what they need each step. And this is where, you can use sort of very small badge-based courses to kind of top up that learning as it's needed. And maybe the outcome takes kind of 5 years or 8 years to bring about. But over that time, the student hasn't had to take on any debt, and they've been really meaningfully engaged in their learning alongside their work. So they get to kind of practice it as they learn it. And I think, those changes are pretty exciting from where we sit in terms of that sort of learning platform that can sit underneath the change that the learner's going through and the manufacturer's going through, or the industry.
How does this compare, Shannon, to just opening a browser, go to Google or YouTube and type in what you want to learn? What's the thing that doesn't do that an LMS environment is superior to?
Yeah, good question, because I think we all do that. Like, I need to figure out how to change this car's lamp, and I haven't had to yet, so I'm going to go and find a video. And I think the difference between that kind of on-the-spot learning, which happens on YouTube or other places, and what happens in iQualify, is that you're looking at kind of like a bundle of concepts that are put together, and you can kind of lead someone through, from the simplest version of that through to the most complex version of it where you're applying it. So you get to kind of work with someone through that journey. iQualify also provides this facilitated environment. So there's often a person involved, and that means that there's the learner, there's the people they're learning with, and they have a bit of social interaction in the platform. And then there's the person that's guiding them through the learning. And that's kind of made to scale into teaching teams and all sorts. So you might have one person for your 40 learners, or you might have a team of 5 people for 2,000 learners, and they can all be sort of in the same environment, working through a particular concept. The learners are kind of helping lift the load because they're helping each other. They're testing their own knowledge by helping the other learners along the way. But also the facilitators are in there kind of guiding people and making sure they're kind of really understanding what's going on. They're managing to apply it, and they're asking all the right questions. So it's certainly a bit of a difference when you have sort of a facilitated learning experience that much more kind of guarantees that the learner's going to get something useful and usable out of their time.
Collaboration has such a big component for many of the ways we learn or like to ingest knowledge, if you like. Now, the reason we're talking today is that iQualify has come on board as an NZ code license holder, which means you're eligible to use that on iQualify. Talk me through the decision of how iQualify got started and built this code base in New Zealand.
Yeah, great. So iQualify came about in about 2014. And it's fair to say that at the time there were a lot of competitors around, and there still are today. And some of them are very, very large organizations. So there's a few players that have a massive dominance in the global LMS market. And then there are hundreds of small platform providers like us. And we really had to look at kind of whether we had something unique to bring to that market. And with the Open Polytechnic kind of flavor that we brought in around, distance, vocational learning, we knew that we had a unique perspective. And we actually did some work with some external groups like Gartner and others, just to make sure that we were kind of going down the right path with this, because it's a big decision. And the other thing we did is we had the idea, but we didn't assume the idea was right initially. So we took on a very, very lean approach where we'd sort of build iterations and get them in front of customers and chat through. And we knew pretty quickly that we had something unique, but also the ability to respond to our New Zealand market was as much a part of the product as the idea. So we built our development team up around the idea that we would continually learn from our market. So over the last 5.5 years or so, we've gone from these sort of 600 initial learners to over 100,000.
Wow.
We've gone from, our first 6 customers to, I think, 240 active businesses every month using the platform. And we've done that by just making sure that we're constantly learning and adapting. So we release code 5 days a week. And that means that, there's always something that we're looking at that we did previously that we're then saying, we did that for the best intention, but was it the best way to achieve it? And without, an organization with New Zealand-based developers working on that, we'd really struggle to have those kind of day-to-day conversations about what we're learning, where we need to go next, their ideas as well. So we have a broad team. There are over 30 people. About half of them are coders, and half of them are in the rest of the infrastructure where you're looking at things like customer success and design and user experience. And the conversation that happens with that group of people results in the kind of innovations and responses to our market. And that's the kind of exciting thing about iQualify, and almost what it is. It's a mechanism to respond to what the market needs from us, rather than being the product we dreamt up on day one. Because I don't know if any of that's there in the product anymore. Like the first version that I built with the idea of doing this, that's all gone for the better. And what's replaced it has been the learnings from the customers that have used the platform.
I noticed, like doing my research, that there was an integration to Zapier that speaks to that this is more than just an LMS in isolation. This is an ecosystem that will let you do things with the learner data beyond just the learning management system. And I wondered to myself, who in the development team prioritized that and got it through? And then that led me to think of the next question, which is, how do you decide what to develop? Because there's so many different things you can connect to, so many different customer needs, and the hundreds of businesses that you've just mentioned will have lots of similar needs, but also a lot of bespoke needs. How do you manage that prioritization stack of what you're going to ship every day? Was it a week you're shipping code?
Every day, yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. How do you work out that priority?
Yeah, so loosely speaking, and it's not an exact science, we put a third of our effort into looking at the usage that our customers now have, and looking at kind of the data from that usage and the conversations that are coming out of that usage. What do we need to change about what they've got in front of them? The next third is the customers that we didn't win, the customers that aren't interested in us. What do they need from us? Why aren't they selecting us? So how do we kind of get our head around that and start, testing that part of the market? And the remaining third is, what is it that no one knows that they want from a platform like this? So what does next year's market need, or the market 2 years out? So for example, we bought badges, and before anyone was really trying to do badgeable kind of learning, we let it sit for a couple of years. And then when an organization called IMS Global came out with an updated standard, we were kind of 3 days away from modifying our implementation to come on board with that. And, suddenly we were kind of one of 7 platforms in the world that could do this, this kind of badging early on. So leading the market sometimes is part of it. And then, following what the customers need is the other part. We also have quite a sort of a broad product management structure in the team. So a lot of the leadership team double up as product managers for the work that we do, for the technical work that we do. And they're influenced by our customer success managers who are out there trying to, help people succeed on iQualify. And they're bringing all those in as well as their ideas. And then my role as general manager also doubles up as kind of this like executive product manager. So how do we sort of balance between all of those competing needs, and how do we, make sure that the people that are putting the money into the platform are getting what they need, as well as making sure that in 2 years' time, the kind of emerging needs are already there ahead of time in the way that we think they should be. So that's our challenge, is to kind of keep it moving fast and always provide just enough of the emerging needs so that people can find them with us, and then doing a really thorough job on improving the stuff that people rely on for their kind of day-to-day businesses. So, we've had some businesses that exist on iQualify, and from what we can see, that they started after we started, and all of their business line is on the platform. And that was kind of part of our goal is, how do we enable a new form of business, which are businesses that exist to, create and deliver training to learners that they can actually make, a business out of. And it's a really exciting place to be for us, to be actually directly enabling new lines of New Zealand business as well.
I like that last point there, because what you're really hinting at is that if you understand and have domain expertise in a particular area, and by sharing that knowledge, it has value to someone else, then you could actually have a business in your head with the help of iQualify, because you're releasing that knowledge in a way that lets the market decide, right? If the market wants to pay for your knowledge, then yes, you've got a course, and you've got a viable business model. There's more than one way to learn. I think in an environment that is fast moving, particularly post-COVID, and there's more than one way to have a career, and certainly a lot more of us are relearning at a later age and having to retrain. The iQualify could be a place to find new sources of knowledge, to find new career paths.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're excited to be in that space, but we think that there's a lot of good knowledge out there, and it doesn't take people long to kind of get on and start creating that stuff, but also getting feedback from their own customers, their own learners, and improving it. And I think that's what we're trying to enable most of all. Don't necessarily expect to get it perfect the first time, but be open to learning about what is right and improve it as you go.
I saw an example. It wasn't a New Zealand example, but out of the US, where their nuclear scientists were starting to retire, and they were worried that they were going to actually lose that domain of knowledge to the next generation. So they had to come up with a way of injecting learning into the days of those before they were going to retire, so that the knowledge could stay with the organization. And this is actually a good risk mitigation strategy. Some of the most expert people in the organization who have been there for years, they're also a key man risk or key person risk. And so creating that knowledge within the organization through tools can sometimes mitigate, not all of it, but certainly a certain amount of it. When you get new people in, they can learn from that content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think IP in organizations is kind of like an undervalued right. And it's certainly something that a lot more businesses could be thinking about how they capture, not only for that maintenance of IP, but also is it commercializable? As a concept, is the know-how around how to achieve this kind of outcome that the business has learned about something that other businesses would be interested in, and becomes effectively scalable consulting. So we can kind of take a consulting, we can put it onto a platform, and then we can coach people through their own learning on it. And that's an area that really excites me personally about what iQualify could do for businesses in New Zealand.
So just help me understand that. So you could actually like white label the platform and have someone could have their own business brand on it, even though it's iQualify driven in the back end?
Yeah, so every sign up, so when someone fills out the form on the website, they get their own iQualify instance in about 2 minutes, and they can upload their logo, upload their own background, and effectively, they could be a one person plus 5 learners, and for us, that's an entire separate customer. So they run their own instance, and then they grow that as they go. So they could start up with 1 person, they could end up with 1,000. For us, it's all they only pay for the users that use the platform, so we're all monthly active use, and we're quite happy if someone only has $10 a month, or if they have 10,000 a month. So that whole scale works for us quite well, and kind of was one of the fundamental sort of ideas in architecting the platform is how do we allow really small businesses to work with us as well as really large ones, where none of them have to front up with all the money required to set up the infrastructure of online learning, which is prohibitive to a lot of organizations. You can't necessarily front up with $10,000 in upfront costs, and we don't make anyone do that, so they just start using it and they pay for what gets used.
What changes have you noticed since the global pandemic, or what opportunities does that provide for a remote first organization like yourself into next year, into 2021?
Yeah, so we were particularly fortunate through that time because of our business. So we do digital distance learning, and we had a lot of organizations ramping up their digital distance learning as a result. So we also went out and supported the business community through a program through our sales team, and just made sure that smaller organizations that survived off face-to-face learning could use the platform for free over that time. So we didn't want those organizations to go away, even though digital wasn't their sort of first format. And that worked really well. We had about 40 New Zealand organizations take it up. And then afterwards, about I think 15 of them stayed with us and started to sort of offer a digital line to what they do anyway. So there's certainly been a shift, I think, that was coming slowly, but it's been accelerated, where organizations understand that doing online or digital delivery of their learning is quite good. It has benefits outside of distancing, and we've seen people do it really well. It takes a little bit of a headspace adjustment, but I think once people get there, it works well. The other thing that we've seen that's been good is that increasingly remote workforce. So we've always had a distributed workforce across the country, but certainly kind of after this, it's much more so. And so we see opportunities to kind of grow our team in a different way across the country, where by exception we had a bunch of people around the place. But now maybe by rule, we'll be looking at people in all the regions and going, well, we want people from that region on our team to make sure we're getting kind of around the headspace of businesses that are in that region when we talk about what's coming next.
That's been a recurring theme through the business owners of software services in particular this year when I speak to them, to say that they actually get happier employees that get to enjoy the lifestyle of the region they're in. They tend to stay longer, and they're able to get on the housing ladder. That's actually a big thing for developers or customer success staff, because they don't necessarily need to compete in the Auckland or Wellington race, because remote work avoids that need to live in those bigger cities.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. I think there's a huge benefit there. It's really good for hiring. It's really good for kind of life balance. But I think it also makes the team better. As long as you start out with this kind of remote first design to how your team works as well. So, the tooling and the practices and the daily check-ins. We use a lot of video in our team, so every meeting is on video by default. And, you just kind of get used to that idea of working through things in a way where you assume there isn't a room to go to. I've had times where I've been in the office in Lower Hutt, and I've had a meeting with my team, and everyone else has been on video. It's been funny, but it's good. Everyone's working effectively. We're getting the results that we need. And, exactly, in terms of people having a better lifestyle, being able to get onto the housing ladder, and just getting a better product because people are in their communities more, seeing a bigger range of people doing a bigger range of things.
Good to hear. Is there anything else that I haven't covered, Shanan, or that I should be asking you about the business, or about the types of customers that you want to be speaking to about your NZ-coded iQualify learning management system?
I think that's kind of covered it well, actually. We did cover everything that was on my list.
Excellent. That means I've either done a good job by excellent research, or by luck, or probably a little bit of both. So I appreciate your time today.